Hey guys, hope everything's going well. I'm just going to jump on here and just do a quick video to help anyone who is maybe struggling to get started on their watercolor. Now, I know the hardest part in art is usually the prep part, so getting everything ready and just making sure that you have everything set up correctly and you have all the materials. So I should have sent with you a watercolor palette. You should be able to find something around your home that you can use for a mixing palette. And then you need a little water bucket. And then of course, I sent a couple brushes for you to use if you did not have brushes. Now, what you've been working on is setting up a still life. You drew out your images. You sent me quite a few compositions, and then I kind of helped you decide which one to go with. And then remember, you have to have it on the watercolor paper. So the paper that I have here is the watercolor paper. Watercolor paper is thicker and it has a little bit of that texture or that tooth to it. So I've got my still life all sketched out. I have the tape on it right here. Now the tape is basically where the highlight is. It's where you want to keep the true white of the paper. You don't want to lose that white. A lot of the time when you're doing watercolor, it's really hard to keep an area white unless you use tape. So use tape. You could use a Band-Aid. You could use really anything that's sticky that will eventually peel away. Before you start painting, make sure you take an eraser and lift any dark lines. So you can see here, I'm just gently lifting. I don't want to lift too much because I don't want to completely lose the image, but you also don't want to go in too early with the color, because then you will avoid covering the pencil lines when you actually go in and paint. So you just take an eraser and lightly erase everything. Once that is complete, your next step is to basically prime your paper. Now remember, when we do watercolor, priming your paper is basically just taking water and putting water everywhere. Now for me, I just like to kind of brush it on quickly, and this just kind of gets your paper ready for the watercolor color. So I'm just kind of priming it. Now, after you prime it with just plain water, you're going to pick an area that you want to start with. It doesn't matter where it's at. Some people like to start background. The thing with watercolor is making sure that you work in stages and in layers. So for me, I'm not just gonna do this leaf right here from start to finish, and then move to this plant, start to finish, and then move to the glass jar, start to finish. I am gonna do one entire layer everywhere. And that first layer is super, super light. So for example, let's say I am going to go in and start on this plant, and I actually have this plant right here. Now for me, I'm gonna start, I already primed it. Okay, so I've gone in and I primed it with water. It's ready to go. Now, I need to think about the colors that I see. For me, the color that I mostly see is kind of a yellow-green, yellow, and some orange. So what I'm gonna do up on my palette is I'm gonna take the yellow-green, and I'm gonna activate that first. Take some yellow-green up here, my mixing palette. And remember, if you want a color to be really, really light, you have to use a lot of water. And we want to go light first. So I'm going to use a lot of water. A lot of water. There's my yellow-green. But I also want to put a little bit of, when I squint, some orange. So it's almost going to make kind of a brown color. So I'm putting a little bit of orange in there. You can see it's slightly changing. So now it's kind of more of a brown green, tan green. So that is kind of that base color that I'm going to start with. And a lot of water. Make sure it's a lot of water. So this is important because what a lot of students do when they go to paint watercolor, and you guys have all used watercolor before, because this is painting too. You guys have done it. What a lot of students do is they go into just one color, and then they sit there and hang out, and then they're like, oh yeah, my plant's green. And they paint their plant like this. That's not the case. That's one layer. But this layer might be too dark for building up other colors. So when I do my layer here, what I'm gonna do is go to that color that I mixed. I'm not gonna go to just straight green. I'm gonna go to the color that I mixed, and I am going to look at my still life, and I'm just going to gently put in a first layer. There. And does it look like I did anything? No, not really. But the first layer is pretty easy. You can see it's just about putting in a little bit of color. And if there's an area that like really stands out being a little bit darker, you could make sure that you get those spots a little bit darker. So the key to that first layer is a lot of water. It's gonna look like you basically did nothing. Now, this leaf right here is a different green. It's more of a forest green color. So now I'm gonna go to this green here, which is a little different. And again, I'm just doing my first layer, so it's okay if I lose this color. I'm gonna go into a little bit darker color. I'm still using a lot of water. And now I'm going to put that first layer in on this leaf. So again, it's putting in color like that. Not much happened as far as it doesn't look very detailed or anything, but it's there, and my first layer has been started. Again, if you go too dark too quickly, you won't be able to build up those colors. So I'm going really, really light. And that is how you should be starting. I wouldn't be surprised if most of you by the end of today are only done with that first layer. Some of you are really getting behind, and some of you are staying right on top of it, so I appreciate that. But if you look here, I'll just show you. That's my first layer of color. It's not really much going on. It's just very simple. All right, make sure you're emailing me if you have any questions or if you are confused. I know this is not easy to do, but you need to let me know if you need help. All right.